Good day, everyone. I hope that you're doing fine right now. Today, I am here with my group mates. We are the Group 1, and we will be discussing about the Declaration of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment and Rio Declaration on Environment and Development. My name is Paul Joshua Adangna. I am here with my group mates, which later on they will report their parts. Miss Hanami Ebio, Miss Shandrix Go, Doringo, and Mr. Miguel Del Valle. And to start our reporting, we would go on to the introduction. And first, let us discuss about the Declaration of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment. Now, a little historical background about this declaration. Now, the World War II had already finished. It has marked an end when the Japanese had been defeated together with the Nazis or the Germans, and now the League of Nations were abolished and a new delegations of different states were created, and it was the United Nations. Now, as the world is starting to gather peace and wars are somehow not more existent in that time, um, the United Nations had decided that maybe this time let's focus on the environment, which will dictate the primary survival of the human beings. And now, as they had decided to talk about matters regarding the problems of the environment, they chose Stockholm to be a place where the Declaration of United Nations Conference on the Human Environment will be held. And Stockholm was the first attempt to assess the global human impact on the environment, as well as the basic common outlook on how to address the challenge of preserving and improving the human environment, which is of paramount importance since all of us live in this world, in an environment like this. It is very important for us to protect our habitat, and that is their same thinking at that point. As a result, rather than detailed normative positions, the Stockholm Declaration advocates for broad environmental policy goals and objectives that were created and were designed together with all the states that are present on the conference. And following Stockholm, however, global awareness of environmental issues skyrocketed, as did international environmental lawmaking. Simultaneously, international development activism shifted its focus from transboundary and global common issues to media specific and cross sectoral regulation, as well as the integration of economic and development considerations into environmental decision making. Meaning that at that time, economics were not separated from the environment, since most of the source of income directly affects the environment. And now, at that point, Stockholm was a magnet for everyone concerned with the environment. Over 1,200 official delegates from 113 nations were in Stockholm for the first international conference on the human environment. Remember, this was the first international conference about human environment. And that is why at the place of Stockholm, it marked a very major event on the history of the environment. And the meeting first proposed to the United Nations by Sweden and approved by the General Assembly in 1968. It attracted a worldwide attention in only 4 short years. And the topic of the human environment had gone from the back pages of the newspapers to make headlines on pages of newspapers and tabloids. The very fact that the conference began with 113 participating countries with a very high level delegation from those countries, this in itself represented a very significant step forward because this demonstrated more than anything else the real concern of the majority of countries in the world, which is the human environment. Now, those countries which did not participate in the conference, they did not remain that way because they were disinterested in the issue, but rather they remained away because of they had different political issues that are of paramount importance at that point, and environmental issues were not that much of a concern. And some were connected on their geopolitical concerns and their economic status of their nation. And in 11 long days and nights, the conference accomplished all it had set out to do. That was a little bit going fast forward, for we will not be going into details on what happened exactly on the day of the conference. But as a marking point, it was held on 11 long days of just planning and planning and planning, and about the world environment. It approved an Earthwatch program to measure and identify environmental problems on a wide scale, as well as an action plan to protect man habitat from other further degradation. And but there was a problem, especially on the committee of the Declaration of the Human Environment, because they had been given the hardest task to draft a set of guiding principles for the preservation of our planet. And the problem they have is that one that more than 100 jealously independent nations could agree upon was a major achievement in its final form. Meaning to say that they need to consider every nation that they will have a middle ground, or in which they all the states would agree and accept the drafts of the conference. And the declaration contained, the content of the declaration contained a preamble and a set of 26 principles stating, among others, that man has a right to an environment of quality and responsibility to protect and improve that environment for future generations. That environmental deficiencies caused by underdevelopment could be best cured by development, and that nations should cooperate to develop international laws to compensate victims of those forms of pollution that cross national boundaries. And now we will be moving forward towards the different principles. As we had said earlier, there had been 26 principles that were created, and I will be discussing the first 13, and my other group mates will be discussing the other principles and also the Rio Declaration. And the first principle was summarized as the right to protect the environment. Man has the fundamental Principle one is man has the fundamental right to freedom, equality, and adequate conditions of life, and an environment of quality that permits a life of dignity and well-being. And he bears a solemn responsibility to protect and improve the environment for present and future generations. And the principle number two focuses on the management of the natural resources. And because the natural resources of the earth, including the air, water, land, flora, fauna, and especially representative samples of natural ecosystem, must be safeguarded. And that is the main point of principle number two. In principle number three is the management of renewable resources. The capacity of Earth to produce vital renewable resources must be maintained, and whatever practicable, restored, or improved. And the principle number four is the conservation of wildlife. Wildlife is very important, and man has a special responsibility to protect such species, because if they have turned extinct, it would be impossible to bring them back to existence. And on number five, the principle number five is the management of not only the renewable resources, but also the non-renewable resources. The non-renewable resources of the earth must be employed in such a way as to guard against the danger of their future exhaustion, and to ensure that benefits from such employment are shared by all mankind. And number six is focus on pollution control. The different discharge of toxic substances coming from different nations. Each country or state or every individual must promote the pollution control, and that is the main point of principle number 6. Going on to principle number 7 is the prevention of pollution of seas. We have seen countless advocacies on the internet about safeguarding our coastal areas, especially the wildlife living on the coastal areas, and these are very important because a lot of companies have been spilling their oils and dangerous substances on the seas, and nations, different states that are here in the conference should um, submit to this such rules of prevention of pollution of seas. And principle number 8 is the economic and social development. It says here that, excuse me, economic and social development is essential for ensuring a favorable living and working environment for man and for creating conditions on earth that are necessary for the improvement of the quality of life. Moving forward to number 9, principle number 9 is the underdevelopment and natural resources. Environmental deficiencies generated by conditions of underdevelopment and natural disasters pose grave problems and can be best remedied by accelerated development through the transfer of substantial quantities of financial and technological assistance. And for the principle number 10 is the stability of prices of primary commodities. For developing countries, stability of prices and adequate earnings for primary commodities and raw materials are essential to environmental management, since economic factors as well as ecological processes must be taken into account. Principle number 11 focuses on the environmental policies. Now, the environmental policies of all states should enhance and not adversely affect the present or future development potential of developing countries. It promotes equality throughout different nations, either developing or not, or rich countries, and that everyone should benefit from these environmental policies without prejudice and different kinds of coercion. And environment protection education. Now, this just simply means that people, nations, states should be educated about the environment protection and education. And lastly, for my part, the rational management and resources. Now, in order to achieve a more rational management of resources and to improve the environment, states should adopt an integrated and coordinated approach to their development planning so as to ensure that development is compatible with the need to protect and improve environment for the benefit of their population. And that is all for my part, and I will call Miss Haname Ebio for the remaining principles. Thank you.